Hi, this is Randy Kirk, and I just wanted to give you a heads up about Cathie Wood's monthly report that she put out yesterday, where she goes over the financials of the country and of the world and tries to draw some conclusions about just exactly what's going on out there. And I just trust Cathie a lot. I've been listening to these monthly reports for a very, very long time. And while her funds have not done very well over the last year and a half or so, that's because of some of the very things that she's talking about in this report. I think you like me might have wondered what in the world is going on with the stock market, what in the world is going on with this economy. And I think Cathie has some thoughts here for us. So let's go down the list just a little bit, and I'll add my commentary as we go. So number one, this is a shocker. If you're not shocked by this, you should be. The money supply is basically growing at the rate of 0%. It might even be negative, she says, based on some understandings that will come out later this month. It may be that the money supply is actually decreasing at this point. The money supply, since it has been charted, has never been zero and has never been negative. So if the money is not changing hands, if there's not enough money in the system, if the banks are not offering the right kind of rates for people to be able to borrow, all the kinds of things that cause money to move are not happening, that's usually not considered to be a very good thing for the economy. So that's a biggie. And when we talk about the possibility of recession or a hard landing next year, that could be an extremely big reason for it. I've been through this once before many of you were born, back in the early years of the Ronald Reagan administration, when interest rates were raised to 17, 18, 20%, and the money just stopped. It must not have been zero because it wasn't measured at zero at that point, but money just stopped. Nobody had any money. Consumers weren't buying, retailers therefore had no money from purchases, so they couldn't pay wholesalers. Wholesalers weren't getting any money from you. I think you get the point. I don't need to go through the whole process. There was no money in the system, and it was extremely, extremely difficult time. It's probably one of the most difficult times I've had in business in my career. Okay, number two, the Fed has raised interest rates at the fastest rate in history. So going from basically 0.5% to now just under 5%, talking about raising it to 5 and over 5%, that kind of an increase has never been done before. So there's no way to be able to estimate what the effect of that kind of a rate increase would be. So even again, going back to the Ronald Reagan years, where the interest rates were raised very rapidly in order to stem inflation that was over 20%. When that was done, it was done because there needed to be some really big medicine that the economy needed to take, but it wasn't raised this rapidly. It was raised higher, but it was not raised at this fast rate and to such a percentage increase. So it's a huge, huge issue. Number three, deflation is already showing up across the economy. We know that used car prices are coming down. Elon Musk has mentioned that it could even be a crisis in the used car lending industry. He thinks it could be similar to the housing crisis when there was a lot of loans out there that were no good. It's very rare that I disagree with Elon. I just did a little additional research before starting this video. I don't think that we're going to see a crisis in auto lending anywhere close to the situation, but there are going to be repos. There's going to be repossessions, and there's going to be additional downward pressure on used car pricing because of it. We already see downward pressure on new car prices. So you have auto prices are definitely down. Housing prices obviously are already down. You have lots of commodities from lumber to copper across the board. Elon just mentioned the other day that a lot of the commodities that are used to manufacture automobiles are already coming down, sometimes very dramatically. Yes, there are some exceptions, but by and large, those things are coming down. Next, and that's just not being taken into consideration. I've told this story before in another video, but you might not have seen it. So let me be very, very clear. this particular recession, this particular inflationary situation was first described by the Fed as being transitory. And everybody laughed, oh, this is transitory. And I went, yeah, it's probably transitory, but it's still an issue. And we don't want to continue to add more fuel to the fire. This is where I was definitely against some of the congressional efforts to add even more spending at the federal level, or to send out more checks at the federal or the state level, to people, because we didn't need more additional fanning of those flames of inflation. But what caused the inflation? This is the first principles, okay? This is what the Fed needs to listen to. This is what the US government needs to listen to. What caused this inflation? If you don't already know, think about it for a minute, okay? You had massive increases in the money supply. Probably, again, maybe the fastest increase in the money supply in history. The money was just free cash. The government just sending money out to everybody. So you had this huge increase in the money supply. You had the money was moving very rapidly through the system, and it was chasing what? An extreme shortage of goods, okay, because the supply chain was disrupted all over the world. So you couldn't spend the money on goods because they just weren't there. They were in the Los Angeles port, or they were still over in China, or they were not being made domestically because parts weren't coming in. So you had this massive shortage of goods. There was no money you had all this money and you couldn't spend it on goods. And, oh, by the way, you couldn't spend it on services either, because the restaurants were closed, and the entertainment venues were closed, and the places that you could travel to were closed. The travel industry was almost shut down. So there's all the kinds of places that you could spend the money that you were just being given, just being handed to you. There was no place to go spend it. When that boom ends, and all of a sudden products and services become available again, now you get a bust, because you now have all of these services and all of this product that's being provided, and it's too much. So you see the cost of clothing coming down. You see the cost of energy. Oil is now at $73 a barrel compared to 130 earlier, a year ago. Cathie mentioned that again. That's come down $25 or 25% just in the last few months, and it's come down $15 just in the last week and a half or so, 2 or 3 weeks. So you have the cost of oil coming down, even in the period of time when everybody talked about this is going to be a crisis. Do you see is anybody talking about an energy crisis here or in Europe anymore? No. Europe got lucky. They had a very kind of a warm winter. America had a very cold snap, but we had plenty of oil. We had plenty of gas. The United States helped out with lots of natural gas going to Europe. I mean, there's so many things that happens when you have these situations. And so far, at least, there is not a crisis in Europe over the price of energy. So all of these things are coming down because there was a boom and then there was a bust. I've been through these in my career over and over and over again, where everybody scrambles to go buy something because there's not enough of it. And then guess what? The supply, the world supply says, hey, we want to make money off of that shortage. They supply it, and then there's too much of it, and then there's a bust in the price and tons of inventory piling up. Seen it over and over. That's what we've got right now. It takes time for the company to transition, for the companies too, to transition through that boom bust. So it was a transitory situation, but the Fed was not patient about the transitory nature of what was going on. They believed it was transitory, and then they chickened out. And that's basically what we've got now as we head into a potential hard landing. Okay, the next one is that the income is not increasing anywhere close to 8% or 6% a year. In fact, did you get a 6% or an 8% raise last year? I bet you didn't. Nobody's handing out 8% raises, or maybe even probably even 6% raises. So what's happened? According to Cathie in her report, the actual spendable wages that people have right now, the amount that they're getting is actually reducing in terms of the ability to buy. So that's not good. Well, it's good if you're the Fed and you don't want people to spend money, but the truth is that the average citizen out there is getting slammed by this entire thing and has less spendable available. What's happening as a result? Credit card usage is skyrocketing and savings is dropping off dramatically. These are not the things that you want even over a short term. You want people to be having enough money to pay their bills without going into credit card debt. And you want people to put money into savings and investments. So these are the opposite of what I think the Fed would want in this situation. So bond rates, if you've noticed, the 10 years at 3.5, 3.57, the 10 years or even lower than that, you have got this inverted yield curve. And according to Cathie, the bond world is telling us that they expect 2% inflation long-term. Now, that could be because they believe the Fed will get it there, but that's not typically how the bond market works. The bond market typically says, we believe that that's how the economy is working. So surprisingly, the bond industry, the bond folks believe that we're already solving inflation, that it is in fact transitory, and that we're not going to be continuing on an inflationary path. So yeah, so out of all of this, I continue to hope that the Fed they're saying that it will be February 1st, it'll either be a 0.5 or a 0.25. This is what everybody's speculating. I'm hoping it'll be 0.25. I'm hoping maybe they decide just to pause. Give it a month. What difference does it make? Give it a little extra minute to see where the economy is going. We don't need to continue to beat the economy down. This is not, you're not going to be able to get inflation in groceries down by raising rates. People are going to buy the same amount of groceries. They're just going to have to either buy it on credit or they're going to have to take it away from something else that they're doing. So that's not going to drive inflation down in groceries, which is the main place where we're still seeing inflation, is in foodstuffs. So you're not going to get the wages down any more than you already are, because guess what? We still have the full employment at this point. Even went down, unemployment went down a little bit this last period, but you're not seeing wage increases, and you're seeing cutbacks in hours, not cutbacks in people. Even with all the headlines about people laying off 10,000 or 5,000 or 6,000, those are headlines that have nothing to do with what the stats are showing us. Even the most recent stats for December are showing that in fact we added 300,000 jobs. There aren't enough humans to fill the positions because the US rate of population growth has dropped to below replacement rate. And the only reason we're slightly high, overall population is increasing, is because of the number of people that are coming in as immigrants from other countries. And thank goodness for those immigrants, or I don't know what we'd be doing right now for employment. So how does that affect you and Tesla and all the rest? Pray that the Fed stops this nonsense. Pray that they have a level period, that they allow it to just rest for a minute and maybe start reducing interest rates, and maybe they'll actually get the soft landing that we would all like them to have. So that's a financial report that I think if you didn't watch the Cathie Wood material, that's my analysis of it. I'm hopefully that was helpful. If you'd like more content like this in the future, please do what you know to do, like and go ahead and subscribe and make comments. I'm loving the comments. Thank you for the subscriptions. The subscription rate is just going through the moon. So thank you for subscribing. Oh, and looking for Patreon members. I'm also seeing a huge growth in the number of Patreon members just in the 8 or 9 days since I announced that I was going to get actively involved. And we are going to have a lot of fun on Patreon because we're going to do brainstorming and spitballing about futurism and about what the awesome future that we're facing and what that might really look like in preparation for my next book, The Elon Musk Magic. Okay, great talking to you.